What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. Yesterday, I gave you my way too early top 25 for 2023. Now it's time for some way too early playoff predictions, and it is way too early to be doing this. There is absolutely no way you're going to make good predictions at this point unless you just get lucky. But so much to go through to figure out about these teams. We don't know what the rosters are going to look like. We don't know all the NFL decisions yet, all the guys in the transfer portal. So it's way too early to be making predictions like this, but we're going to do it anyways just for the fun of it. And really what I did with these predictions is I really looked at the schedule a lot. So I kind of picked my top teams that I think are the legitimate contenders, and then pretty much just went with the home and away and saying, all right, the home team will probably win this game. And just kind of playing out the season in my head really quickly. And this is what I came up with. So let's get started here. And again, some of these games where I just went with the home team, once I evaluate these teams a little bit more, I might say, you know what, I think this team is good enough to go on the road and win this game. And I definitely think my playoff predictions will change before the season gets here. But this is the way too early. And we'll start with the ACC. So I think your top contenders here are Clemson and Florida State. And by the way, my way too early playoff predictions last year had Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Clemson, which is actually the most popular playoff prediction last year when it came time for all the actual playoff predictions to come out. I made some changes to my predictions once we got to the start of the season, or close to the start of the season. But that was my way too early prediction last year. So just in case you were wondering, I believe that channel was deleted. That was on my main channel that, of course, got deleted. So, unfortunately, you can't go back and watch it. But that's what it was. I went back and looked at my graphics. So, anyways, back to the ACC. Clemson, Florida State. I think these are your two teams. Florida State does have to play on the road at Clemson. That's going to be tough. I could see a scenario play out where Florida State loses that game, but then they beat them in a rematch. Because, remember, no divisions in the ACC this year. And so, I think Florida State has a really good shot. Even if they were to lose to LSU, you lose that game, then you lose to Clemson on the road, but then you beat Clemson in a rematch, that might be enough to get Florida State in as a two-loss ACC champ because of their schedule. Might not, though. It just depends on how things shake out. But Clemson, they get Notre Dame at home this year. That'll be big. Florida State at home. Really like the way the schedule sets up for them. They do have South Carolina on the road. That'll be a tough one. And we're going to get into these schedules a lot more, really starting next week. I'll do my schedule previews and early projected records. But, yeah, quick look at it. I think Clemson and Florida State are your top contenders out of the ACC. They are legitimate playoff contenders. And then dark horses, I think Miami, North Carolina, and NC State. I know I had Miami in my playoff prediction last year, and it was a terrible prediction. But if you really think about it, my predictions are actually, in a way, kind of accurate because, well, I talked about if you change out Miami and TCU, I had the top 5 teams right, but I talked about how I thought there was going to be a surprise team. It wasn't Miami, obviously, it was TCU, but I was kind of right, I guess. I'll take a little bit of credit for saying that there would be a surprise team kind of come out of nowhere. But again, I was wrong. I was wrong. It was not Miami. Maybe it is this year. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, I'm not going to pick Miami to make the college football playoff. I think I learned my lesson. But there are some ingredients there. It's year 2 under Mario Cristobal. They've added some nice players the last couple of years, these recruiting classes. They've got veteran quarterbacks now with Tyler Van Dyke. If he can stay healthy, maybe there's a chance Miami can make a run this year. North Carolina with Drake May in a division that's probably not going to be all that tough. I think you have to at least consider them. And this is why these predictions are way too early. Just a couple of days ago, NC State would not have been in this video, but they just added Brennan Armstrong. He reunites with his old offensive coordinator. He put up big numbers there at Virginia, if you remember. So I think that maybe puts NC State in this conversation a little bit. I think these teams are clearly behind Clemson and Florida State, but if one of those teams does have some injuries or something happens, maybe one of these teams could surprise in the ACC. It's possible. It's possible. Let's go now to the Big Ten. And your top contenders are Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. I could see a scenario where all of these teams split with each other and you have 3 11-1 teams. That is a real possibility. And if it happens that way, you never know. We could see all three of them in the college football playoff. Michigan will get Ohio State at home. They'll play on the road at Penn State. Ohio State will get Penn State at home. They'll play on the road at Michigan. And then that leaves Penn State to play Michigan at home and go on the road to face Ohio State. But yeah, these three teams are all top 10 teams. They're definitely in this conversation, definitely top contenders. It could come down to, just the way the schedule will shake out. And you look at the rest of the Big Ten. I don't have any dark horses here in the Big Ten just because I don't see anyone overcoming all three of these teams. And these three teams are just going to be so much above everyone else, just like they were last year. If you're looking for a dark horse, you've got Wisconsin with Luke Fickell taking over, Nebraska with Matt Rule taking over, Iowa with the Cade McNamara transfer. If someone could emerge out of the West, maybe it's one of those three teams. But still, let's say you win the West, you still got to get through these three teams, one or two of them, because most of those, I think those three teams I just named all play at least one of these teams, and then they would also play them in the Big Ten Championship. So I just don't see that happening. That's why I'm going to say, really, you've just got three contenders out of the Big Ten. Let's go to the Big 12 now. I don't have any top contenders. I don't think anyone is considered a top contender out of the Big 12, but I think someone could do what TCU did last year, and if someone does do that out of the Big 12, it's, I think, going to be one of these five teams: Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas State, Baylor, or maybe even TCU again. These would be the dark horses. Texas, they have Alabama in the non-conference, so they probably can't afford it. If they lose that game, they can't afford another loss. You look at, though, again, TCU last year, they just won a lot of close games. Oklahoma lost a lot of close games. If that flips around, maybe Oklahoma could represent the Big 12. So I'm going to say that there really isn't a team that's, in my opinion, a top contender out of this conference. But because just seeing what TCU did last year, we could definitely see someone out of this conference shoot up there and perhaps be a surprise team. Let's go to the Pac-12 now. Top contenders: Utah, Oregon, Washington, and USC. Cam Rising announced that he'll be coming back. So that means that all four of these teams had their starting quarterbacks coming back, and all four of these teams were pretty good last year. I looked at the schedules, and I didn't see a clear advantage for any team. Just didn't see that. With no divisions, there's not really going to be a chance for a team, although if you went back to the divisions, you would have two from each division, so that wouldn't really matter anyways. But I think the path is going to be tough for all four of these teams. We could see them beat up on each other, just like what we might see out of the Big 12. If someone can emerge, though, you look at USC, they've got to play Notre Dame in the non-conference. They play them on the road. That's going to be a tough game. It's going to be tough, in my opinion, for the Pac-12. But all four of these teams are, in my opinion, top contenders just because they're going to be really good. All four of them. And if they can just find a way to win some close games, find a way to win a big game on the road, perhaps you could see one of these teams come out of the Pac-12. Don't really have any dark horses. It's kind of the same thing with the Big Ten. I was going to put Oregon State and UCLA on here, but I just don't see either one of those teams getting through all four of these teams. Just like with the Big Ten, I don't see another team getting through those big three. So if a team comes out of the Pac-12, it will be one of these four teams. Let's go now to the SEC. I think you've got Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. Georgia, we know they're going to be there. Their schedule sets up really well. LSU, if they can beat Florida State, they might not have to beat Alabama. They'll play them on the road this year, but if they can win the rest of their games, you could see an 11-1 LSU getting in there. Alabama, I think, in a really good position to win the SEC West this year, based off of their schedule anyways. They get Tennessee at home, LSU at home. Toughest road games will be Texas A&M and Auburn. So yeah, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, these are your top contenders. I think they'll all three be top 10 preseason teams. I know Georgia and Alabama will be. I think LSU will be as well. Remember, I had them at number 3 in my way too early top 25, so I'm very high on the Tigers. But all three of these teams, I think, have a really, really good shot to make the playoff, whether it's winning the SEC or maybe getting in there with one loss, especially for Alabama or LSU. If they were to go 11-1, not go to the SEC championship, definitely a path for them. And then the dark horses in the SEC, I think you got Texas A&M and Tennessee. Look, you're going to say, wow, you're overhyping Texas A&M again. Remember, I'm the guy that was not overhyping Texas A&M last year. I picked them to go 8-4. They obviously were a lot worse than that, but you had a lot of people picking them as a playoff team. And so I was not, overly high on Texas A&M. I do think they have a chance this year to be a surprise. You just look at the talent on the roster. They're going to have, this time, a veteran quarterback coming back, or at least a guy with experience. Maybe Max Johnson winds up get him healthy. Maybe he steps in there. I think they would have been a much different team with him this past year. And Connor Wegman, he looked really good last year as well down the stretch as a true freshman. So I think this is a team to watch out for. It'll be tough for them, but they do get Alabama at home. You win that game, you never know. And Tennessee, they get Georgia at home. So if they can pull off an upset there, you never know about the Vols. I think this will be a good team. I think people are writing them off because they lose some big-time players. The transfer portal is still out there, and they just added a big receiver the other day. So watch out for Tennessee to possibly be a dark horse, but I think your top contenders in the SEC are Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. So let's get to my way too early predictions. So I'll kind of go through here. First of all, Big 12, Pac-12, I think those two teams, those two conferences, they're going to beat up on each other, and I don't really see a team making it out of the Big 12 or the Pac-12. Like I said, somebody could do what TCU did last year. It can definitely happen, but I'm not going to predict it. I don't have a gut feeling that a team is going to do that. Maybe I will, though, once we get to through the offseason and do more research. Maybe a team like Oklahoma or a team like Washington will really jump out, and I like the way their schedule sets up, and maybe I'll put them in here like I did with Miami last year. But as of right now, no teams out of the Big 12, no teams out of the Pac-12. I think your number one seed is going to be Georgia. I mean, maybe I'm overreacting because of the national championship game, but this is just a team that I don't know that they lose a game. I just don't know that they lose a game in the regular season. And then, it could be a tough game for them in the SEC championship. I think LSU will be a tougher test this year. Alabama, of course, will be a tough test. So there's not a guarantee that they're going to win the SEC, but overall, if I'm just going to look at the odds of things, I would say Georgia probably is the most likely team to go undefeated. And, maybe I change my pick once we get, again, to my actual predictions. Maybe I'll throw LSU or Alabama in there to win the SEC, and that could knock Georgia down or maybe even out of the playoff picture. We'll see. Tennessee, again, the only game I could see them possibly losing in the regular season. And so I'm going to go with the safe pick Georgia here at number 1. Number 2, I think they do it again this year. I think the Michigan Wolverines win the Big Ten. They get Ohio State at home. I think there's a good chance they lose, say, to Penn State on the road. That'll be a tough game. Penn State's going to be good this year. I know the game wasn't close last year, but it could be a different story this year. But even if they win that game, or even if they lose that game, I still think they will win the Big Ten. And I'll kind of go through some tiebreakers here in just a second. So Michigan at number 2, same top 2 from this past season. Now we're going to make a change. So number 3, all right, I know I'm going to get some hate for this one. I think people are overlooking this team, and it's not just because of Sam Hartman, but I have Notre Dame right now as my number 3 team in the playoff picture. Yes, they do get Sam Hartman, but they're going to be good on defense. I think they'll be improved. A lot of guys coming back on that side of the ball. Offensive line should be strong. Run game should be strong. I talked about this the other day. If they can get some guys to step up at receiver with Sam Hartman at quarterback, this team is going to be very dangerous. And I like the schedule. So that's probably the biggest reason why I have them at number 3. They get Ohio State at home, and they also get USC at home. I think having those games at home gives them a great shot to win both of those. They do play Clemson on the road, so I'm going to say Notre Dame right now probably goes 11-1. Whether they lose to USC or Clemson or Ohio State, I think that they will get to 11-1, and because of their schedule, it's enough to get them into the college football playoff. And then at number 4, I'm going to go with Penn State right now. So this is kind of the way I see it playing out. Again, just looking at these schedules, I think Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State are going to have a 3-way tie in the Big Ten East. Ohio State, I think, will have a second loss because I think they might lose to Notre Dame. It's a game early in the year with a new quarterback on the road. That will be a tough test for them. And so Ohio State maybe finishes losing to Notre Dame and losing to Michigan. They're 10-2. They don't make it in. And that, again, going back to the Big Ten championship race, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, you go to the tiebreaker there, and I think that Penn State's going to be eliminated because they have the easier schedule out of the cross-division matchups. And so the tiebreaker comes down to Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan wins the head-to-head. Michigan goes to the Big Ten championship. And, I wasn't supposed to have to look into all of this. This is supposed to be a really quick prediction, but I had to do it. I had to do it to see how it would play out. So, again, Michigan would be the team to go to the Big Ten Championship. Ohio State would be 10-2. Penn State would be 11-1. And I've got the Nittany Lions advancing to that number 4 spot. I think every other team out of the SEC will have 2 losses. Maybe it's a regular season loss and then a loss to Georgia in the SEC Championship. Again, Ohio State with 2 losses. Florida State, Clemson, you have to watch out for them in the ACC. I could see a scenario where Florida State loses to Clemson and then they avenge that loss with a win in the ACC Championship. But right now, I'd probably pick LSU to beat them. So I think Florida State might have 2 losses. Maybe Clemson's sitting there with 1 loss, even if they don't win the ACC. A lot of different scenarios to look at. And like I said, we'll evaluate these teams much, much more as we go through the offseason. And I have a very strong feeling that my predictions will change once we fully evaluate those teams and really break down the schedules and do all of that. But a way too early prediction for you. A little bit different, I guess, than what most people are going to have. But I've got Georgia, Michigan, Notre Dame, and Penn State. I do not think these are the top 4 teams, but it's just kind of the way I see it playing out because of the schedules. Give me your way too early playoff predictions down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.